Hello, everybody. Hello. Wait. How about I actually have the microphone close to my face? Hey, everybody. I hope you can hear me reasonably well. Hi. Today we are talking. Welcome to the LRRTechs. And today we're talking about Studio C, which is where we are right now. As volume a little low. Here, let me just turn it up a little bit. Okay. So if you, as somebody mentioned in the chat, I just put out a notice on Twitter that has a little tech diagram that I drew to give you an idea of what the setup here is. If you saw my LRRTech streams for the old Moonbase Delta for the Streaming Office and Studio A, I did sort of similar diagrams for those. This one is even more complicated. So I thought we would just kind of go through that. Here I am here with Heather, who's going to help me out operating some extra cameras, because we have a lot of cameras here in the office, in Studio C. That's part of why that diagram is so complicated. And so, yeah, I thought I'd just sort of go through that and see what's going. Yeah, she can see the chat there, so that's because we have a chat monitor, which is also in that diagram. So let's first talk about the cameras. So let me just switch over to, I have a variety of views here. So if I switch over to the diagram here, hey, I am inside the diagram. You can see, is this mic being weird? Seemed like it was acting oddly there for a sec. Anyway, so you can see on this diagram that there's a whole lot of different stuff that's all going through this main computer here. Wait, I have a little. This here. That's what we're talking about. The Studio C PC, which is the really the brains of the operation in many different ways. This is obviously, this diagram, the pictures of the different things are not precise, but they're just a rough idea of what it is. You can see the specs on that on this computer that's running the stream right now. It's a Ryzen 8-core 3.4 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes of RAM, GeForce GTX 1060. So pretty hefty specs, especially in terms of the processor. Graphics card is reasonably good, but not like crazy, because of course this computer doesn't play any games. So that graphics card is just being used to render different things. The big deal on this though is the capturing. And you can see we have a Magewell Pro Capture Quad SDI, which is a pretty heavy-duty piece of hardware. If you saw my going through of our streaming studio, you will see that in the streaming studio we're also using a Magewell card, and I'm a huge advocate of the Magewell stuff, actually. Now that I've actually got a chance, or that I've experimented with quite a few different capture cards, Blackmagic and Avermedia and Elgato, and Magewell is sort of in a little bit of a different tier in terms of capture stuff. It's sort of a more pro level, I guess you would call it. It's hitting a bit of a mid area between what I would call sort of the consumer prosumer level cards and the like ridiculous commercial cards, which are like $3,000 or $4,000 the Magewell cards will be more expensive than your Blackmagic cards, your AverMedia cards, or Elgato or whatever. But their capabilities, I found that they're more reliable. They can do all sorts of cool stuff in terms of they can on the fly resample. They can take basically any video input and resample it to whatever you need. So they can take low resolution or high resolution stuff. Whereas like a Blackmagic card, you have to be very specific and tell it like this is a 1080p signal at 30 frames a second, or else it doesn't show up. Whereas Magewell can take whatever and resample it to what you need. It also has extremely low latency, which is great for what we do. That means that the time it takes for something to happen on screen and for the video to, or the time it takes for the video to be done by the camera and then get processed and appear on the screen is as low as is technically possible. And so that's great when we have the setup we do where we have lots of different microphones and cameras and stuff, because the synchronization of the video and the audio is important. And so whereas a typical capture card may have 200, 300, 400, even upwards of that milliseconds of latency, and capture the resolution or the latency on the Magewell cards. They actually measure in lines, like as in lines of resolution, like rendering speed, and it's something like 50 lines or something, which is great. So the fancy setup that we have here is, like I said, we've got quite a few different cameras that we're running, and let me just actually show you the cameras that we have operation. So the normal setup for our streams, a bog standard AFK stream or Magic stream, we're running 4 cameras here in the office, and I can cut to a multicam shot here. You can see how the cameras are set up. So we've got this camera, which is currently set up there. We've got our wide camera, and then we also have another camera on the other side. So we've got, and on the diagram you can see that we've got these 3 Blackmagic Studio cameras, which are quite nice. They are again a good sort of combination of sort of a pro level or pro quality, but not into the crazy high expensive stuff. But the really fancy part, I guess you might say, is you can see we've got 3 cameras here, and then there's the one down. Why can't I point properly? That one there. This image in the bottom, which is actually a 4th camera, a 4th input, I guess you'd say. Like in this diagram, like I said, the Magewell is a quad SDI card, which means it's got 4 SDI inputs, and it looks, as you can see, it looks like we have 3 cameras. So why do we need 4 inputs on our capture card? That's because of how our setup is here. We've got all these cameras. Trying to explain this in a useful way. So we've got these 3 cameras, doop, 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 and then they go into this switch, which is a matrix switch, which means it's got 8 inputs and 8 outputs, and any of those inputs can be mapped to any of those outputs. And what's great about that is that we can have, what we're actually using it for is we're splitting. So we're saying we're taking in those three cameras and we're splitting their signals two ways, right? So we're splitting those the three cameras come into the switch, and then they get split out, and one version of the signal goes into our computer and is captured directly, which is what you can see here. 1, 2, 3 at the top, and then the fourth line into our studio our streaming computer here, the Studio PC. The fourth input on our Pro Capture card is actually the output of this, the Blackmagic ATEM TV Studio. So what this is it's what's called a video switcher, and what it is it's a system that allows us to greater control over the cameras. And because this is a Blackmagic this is a Blackmagic TV Studio, and these are Blackmagic studio cameras, the ATEM can control the cameras, and we can control them from from the computer here. And then they also take the inputs from the cameras, and it can also switch. So if you see here, this gives us a lot of flexibility with how we want to set up our system. So for instance, what we can do is, we've got these three cameras here, which you can see at the top. The bottom is actually the output from that ATEM, and I can switch that I could have that to be one of the other cameras. So I can have that to be any of these cameras, and I'm just switching these with buttons on the keyboard. Doot, 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 doot. Or I can have it being I can have it being another input on the ATEM, because the ATEM has more than three inputs, and I can plug other cameras into that, like for instance the overhead camera that we use for Magic and for streaming. And you can see Heather has pointed up. You can see there's our rig there, and in that pile of stuff, the area right above the table is quite active. There's a lot of stuff there. We got cameras, we've got microphones, and various other things, all on our lighting rig here at the top. But anyway, so you can see here that we can have, and we can also have other cameras. So we can only have a maximum of 3 cameras plugged into the computer, plus the input from the ATEM. But we can have more cameras plugged into the ATEM that we can then switch between. So, for instance, for Loading Ready Live, the fly-through camera, like the camera that we use at the beginning, where it's like, from near and far, young and old, people of every shape, ability, and whatever. That whole thing is we can have a fourth camera plugged into the ATEM, and use this view there, and use this input down here to illustrate that, to switch to that camera. We also use it for Dice Friends to have the close-up of the DM. Securely, the dangling mic is like the sword of Damocles. I mean, that's actually that's the nice thing about that is XLR connectors are designed to be used that way. They click. Like they connect together. Also, the Rode boom mics are not very heavy, so, and they're covered in like foam. It's like a Nerf sort of Damocles. It wouldn't be that bad. So let me. So that may seem like kind of an odd way of doing things, to have all the inputs going through the ATEM and also into the camera, and also into the computer. And that's a workflow that we arrived at through sort of iteration process, and actually talking to other people doing streaming stuff, like talking to the people who do like the Penny Arcade tabletop streaming and stuff, and what their setup is. And the idea here is that it gives us a lot of flexibility between using the capabilities of the ATEM, which is good for certain things, like it can do the switching and it can control the cameras, but it doesn't have a lot of things it can do in terms of like special effects, or overlays or combinations of things. So for instance, like the setup that we have for like Magic playing, where we have the table and then two face cams on either side, you can't really do with the ATEM, at least not easily. And then like the overlay, and obviously the overlay has all the HTML controls and stuff that we've talked about before. The question about and the other reason that we use the ATEM, and part of the reason why we use the Blackmagic cameras in particular, is that the ATEM the connections to the cameras is a bidirectional system. So if you look at the diagram, boop, you can see that each camera has two SDI cables. The purple is SDI. I like that, by the way. It wasn't really intentional, but I love how this sort of turned out to look basically like a sphere grid from an RPG. I don't know what the leveling setup is, but just the way there's like different quadrants of colors and go through different stages. Anyway, so why there's two SDI cables going to each camera, and you can probably see that. Wait, somewhere. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, if Heather points it at the other camera, woo, you can see. Well, you can't really see it, but there's two. Oh, there you go. There, you can see it on that camera better. There's two SDI cables coming out of each camera. One's going out, one's going in. What that means is that not only are we getting the signal from the camera, but we are also getting the ATEM can send information back to the camera and can control it. It can't control everything. Theoretically, it could control. Obviously, it can't control like the panning of the tripod and stuff, unless you had some sort of motorized system, which is possible, but we don't have. And if you get the right kind of lenses, you can control the focus and stuff, which unfortunately the lenses that works with are they're sort of few and far between. But what the big thing that you can do is control the white balance, the like iris, the ISO, the gain, various things like that, so that rather than having to go over to the camera and control everything, you can do it all from one central location. And I can show you actually what that looks like. If I go over to here, boop, you can see that this is the software control system. So there are various ATEM control, or there are various ATEM devices you can get. We've got the TV Studio, which is sort of the low end of their control things. Their more advanced ones actually have like a a real, like a physical switching board that basically looks like this, but made with real buttons and stuff. The fact that they made their software look almost identical to their actual physical board is actually kind of dumb in the sense that, like, it's software. You don't have to have like a limit to how long the name on a button is. Like, the button, you could have more than this number of buttons. There's no reason why I can only have this number of buttons when it's all in software, but that's how they do it. So this, like, I can if I bring up the actual, this is the ATEM view here, right? And I can switch back and forth, using this if I wanted to. I can also do it from the keyboard. But then I can also go down here to camera, and I can adjust the setting of the camera. So for instance, camera 6, camera 5 is the camera that is this camera that you're looking at right now. And I can go dark or light. I can mess around with the settings in this. And this is actually changing the physical, this is actually changing the settings in the camera. This isn't like an effect that XSplit is applying afterwards or anything. So that's really handy. You can change the white balance. You can change all these different effects. And so that's very handy, because otherwise you have to go around each camera separately, and that's a pain in the butt. And also this gives you more control than you would have actually on the camera. Like, you can actually go in and do very sophisticated color adjustments on the cameras that the actual, like, interface on the back of the camera doesn't actually even have those settings. Like, you can't change. The camera is capable of those changes, but they don't actually have an interface in the back on the real camera to make that change. So you can go old-timey grayscale on the fly. Yes. Look. Ooh, saturation down. I mean, old-timey grayscale I could do in XSplit as well. But yes. These are all things that we can do. What are the XLR cables on the backs of the Blackmagic cameras? Those are power. They're not actually XLR cables. They are 4-pin power connectors that look almost identical to XLR cables, because that's how the world works. Let's see what else we got going on here. So that's the main cameras that we have, and those all go through SDI. And if you saw, actually, one of the early-ish Tinker Tailor Solder Fry episodes in this Moonbase, we actually made a bunch of the cables that you see. We crimped the cables and made so we had a bunch of cables that were the right length. So that was cool. We were like, we could buy all these cables, or we could just buy a huge reel of the, like, SDI coax stuff and a bunch of the ends and set it up. Is this more or less the setup you had last Desert Bus, or has there been any big revelations since? This is more or less the setup. Well, this isn't the setup we had for Desert Bus, but we had all the stuff for this setup pretty much at like Desert Bus 11. Yes. The last Desert Bus was Desert Bus 11. Yes. We had pretty much all the stuff for this setup at that point. It's just been sort of a matter of things. This is, and the reason why that we're able to do all this cool stuff, obviously, is because of the amazing support that we got when we moved into this Moonbase, and we just put up the customer, or the customer appreciation, the donor appreciation wall, to thank you all for that, because we had plans for what we wanted to do here that were sort of in several stages, and because of the support that people were able to give us, we were like, oh wow, we can just go right to the cool thing. So those are the three main cameras that we use in here, and in terms of quality and stuff, you know, they're quite good cameras. They're different though than other. Because they are studio sort of specific cameras. They're a little bit weird in terms of thing. Like for instance, they don't have any. There's no way to actually like record on them. They don't have like SD card slots or any kind of recording medium on them, and they're a little bit light sensitive. That's taken some experimentation, getting used to with the lighting in here and stuff. And I hope that I feel like we're in a pretty good spot now, but there's like some of our early streams in here where we were still sort of getting the lighting worked out, ended up being kind of dark because how the cameras operate. So we also have the overhead camera, which if you saw my setup for Studio A is the same camera. And again, that's that camera there. Whoop. And that's the camera right in the middle there. And frankly, it's not that good a camera. Like, it's a fine camera, and for what it does, it just points straight down and does the thing. That's probably the next thing that we would upgrade. I have my eye on the Blackmagic Micro Studio camera, which is basically like our other studio cameras, but smaller, as the name suggests. It's designed for like overhead or drone applications and stuff. Beside that camera is actually a digital SLR still camera with a big zoom lens on it, as you can see there. And that's our card recognition camera. And the reason why it has a big zoom lens on it is so that obviously it can get nice and close. How the card recognition, how the card recognition system works means that we don't actually need a super high resolution picture of the cards, but it does need to be clear, and it does need to be sort of large. You know, we want the card to occupy quite a large section of the view, and we don't want a lot of other, like, we want it to be just centered on the sort of recognition area, which is the logo. How we get video out of that, you can see on the diagram here that the card recognition camera is connected with the orange there, the USB, and you might be wondering how a Canon T2i is acting as a USB webcam. It is acting as a USB webcam using a piece of software called SparkoCam, which I can show you here. Oops, hide that. And I don't really know anything much about SparkoCam as a piece of software, but it has the capability of you taking a Nokia or Nikon or Canon digital SLR and using it as a webcam. It's not a great webcam in the sense that, like, the resolution is, the latency and the resolution is not, and like frame rate and everything is not amazing. But the big deal is that you can zoom in, like, because it's a digital SLR, I can put that big zoom lens on it. Whereas normally, like with a webcam, with like a regular, you know, one of these like we use for drafting, the camera would have to be like really, really close to the board in order to actually do the card recognition, and so it would be in shot, which would look bad. The T2i is not actually running Magic Lantern. I did run it on Magic Lantern for a bit, and then was getting the video through HDMI, but using the SparkleCam system supersedes that. It doesn't require any special firmware because it's using the USB output on the camera, which I believe is mostly kind of a debug thing. I don't think it's definitely not supposed to be used this way, but it works. Yeah, not Sparkle Cam, SparkOCam. So that's, you can see, so we've got our basic setup. We have 5 cameras going into the Studio CPC. We also have these life cams, like I showed you, or like I was saying, these are the draft cameras that we use. They're Microsoft LifeCam Cinemas. They're they're fine cameras. We actually use, even though they're 720p cameras, they work fine for drafting because we never actually show that full screen. And we like them because the color reproduction on them is quite good. Like it's the color reproduction on them with these is better than we've got from higher resolution newer cameras, webcams. So that's why we use these. Theoretically, those could be improved too, I guess. But in an ideal world, what would you replace the detail cams with? You mean the overhead, like the overhead camera? Well, the overhead camera in an ideal world are replaced with the Blackmagic Studio Micro, and that ideal world might actually come to pass fairly soon. The card recognition camera, honestly, is fine. The reason why I'm using the T2i is just because we happen to have a couple of digital SLRs around here at the office that we don't use anymore, that we used to use for filming. For the life cams, I'm sure there are better webcam type things around that maybe we would experiment with. We would want to keep it to something that's a USB camera, though, just so that we wouldn't need even more capture stuff on the computer. But anyway. So that's our main, the main camera setup. In terms of tech here, of course, we also have audio stuff. And what you're listening to me with right now is this here, which is over here. It is the Shure wireless WL93 is the kind of microphone, and the receivers we use are the SLX4. And the to be honest, these have been it's been a little mixed. And I would say that that's probably only partially the microphone's fault. Partially it's just our collective inexperience with, especially with wireless microphone technology. We've been a little disappointed in the reliability of them in terms of and like the distance. Like we can't use these wireless microphones. We can't use like over in the kitchen, for example. Like as far like they have to stay within. We can use them in people could probably or like Studio A. Like the streaming office, we couldn't have people in the streaming office using the wireless mics and it be coming here. The distance and the walls and stuff is too bad. I think it's probably because a combination of the, whatever frequency silliness we have around here in terms of interference and, what the walls are made out of and all that kind of stuff. And so you'll hear, we try to obviously do what we can to avoid it, but we do have occasional problems you might hear on streams where the audio will sort of cut out a little bit. So we're always experimenting with trying to make that better. The other big enhancement here, in comparison to what you might have seen our setup in the old office in Studio A, is the mixing board here, which is the Allen & Heath QU16 mixing board. Heather can show the back of it there. You can see, and then wait, if I can use I can probably use the webcam here to show you the front here. Hey, there we go. There's the front of it. And this is a pretty good board. I've been pretty happy with how this board is operated. It's taken a while to sort of get used to it, and again, that's largely just my inexperience with this kind of stuff. I've just been kind of figuring it out as we go along. But one of the nice things about this board is that it does operate relatively simply. It is a digital mixer, but it's relatively straightforward in terms, you don't have to go like super deep into programming it in order to get it to work at all. The part of the reason why we got an Allen Heath is the board we have in Studio B, which used to be which in Moonbase Delta was Studio A, is also an Allen Heath, and it worked great. And so we wanted to figure might as well keep with that, since they have a pretty good reputation. And again, if you have seen, you might have seen in the Studio A or the old layout, we had a separate compressor, expander, limiter box that we used in order to help with people like, say, Adam or Alex or Ben, who tend to be, shall we say, excited about things that happen. Whereas this board, because it's a digital board, it can actually do all those effects internally. In fact, I can just put this down here. You can see every channel has EQs, gates, compression, different capabilities built into it. So there's lots of cool stuff you can do with it. As with a lot of technology, we certainly don't use the board to its maximum potential. There's things that it can do that we don't use, but it's pretty good. I would put this in a recommendation column, because it's digital. These are motorized faders, so that means that I can be like, oh, so this is the main mix we have here, but what is the mix that we use for when we are just for the mix that's going out to the computer? Let's look at what that looks like, which is this one. This is the mix that goes out to the computer. You can see it's the mix that goes out to the computer is just everything except the line 16, which is a I forget, I don't know what you would technically call it, but it is the internal audio of the computer, so that normally plays directly into XSplit, but so that I can actually hear it in my headphones, I have to play it through the board as well. And obviously I don't want that coming back through the mixer to be listened to by the stream again, otherwise it would be a weird echo. So yeah, you can move those. There's actually like an iPad and an iPhone app that you can get for it. I think I actually have it installed. So that, because this board is actually network compatible. So Yeah, I think I have this. So if I switch to here, oh, it's a ghost. See, I can adjust it. Wiki, 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 wiki. Anyway. So there's all sorts of things this board can do. We're not using to its fullest capabilities, but it got a good workout during Desert Bus actually, because we were using. You can see like the board that we use in Studio B has 4 auxiliary outputs. This board has 10 auxiliary outputs, each one that can be adjusted separately. So there's all sorts of really fancy things you can do with it. Anyway, so there's a QU, the QU. The apps and stuff is something that it's like there's cool things you can do in terms of like people can be able to like mute their own microphones or adjust their own audio levels like on the fly, but that in our experience that seems to have ended up that generally ends up being more trouble than it's worth, because then for instance the people on camera have to like have a phone that they're messing with, plus they can't actually hear it because they aren't wearing headphones. So in terms of microphones, so again, I'm wearing this wireless microphone. You can see in the diagram here that we have 4 of those. But for something like, say, Dice Friends, we typically have 5 people on. So in that case, we'll use a wired mic, one of our wired mics from Studio B that we use for podcasts, which is nice. Like these are the WL93 wireless microphone. The ones we use in the other microphones we use are the SM93. They're actually the exact same microphone. The WL93 just has the wireless pack. So we can sort of interchange those, which is handy. You saw on the ceiling there, dangling like the sword of Damocles, we have the room mics, the Rode NTG2 room mics. These are also this is actually the same kind of microphone that we used for our boom up until quite recently. There it is there. And we'll move these around actually a fair amount depending on what we're doing. Typically during Learning Ready Live, they'll be over wherever we're going to be ending up the show, so we can do the sub-welcomes with them. In this case, they were set up for the Magic stream, for the drafting portion of the Magic stream. And the other microphone, of course, we have is the most important microphone, which is this one right here, which is the control microphone for, because typically I'm wearing a wireless mic right now just so I can move around a bit more. But typically when myself or Heather or Corey or Beej or whoever is sitting behind the desk here doing the switching, typically we don't have a microphone, but we do have this microphone that we can turn on. Here, let me just, which is the one of these SM58 microphones, which are fabulous microphones for when you're going to talk really close. Like this. Hey everybody, how's it going? This microphone is much more precise, I guess you would say. That's why I have to have this pop shield here. This is the Hodor snark mic, yes. Very important. I mean, it's really the snark mic for anyone. Yeah. Anytime you want to do smooth jazz. It's good for that. If you are a long-standing Loading Ready Run viewer of our podcasts, you might have seen that we used to do all our podcasts using this microphone. This might be a little quiet right now. We used to do all our podcasts using these microphones. We have quite a few of them here in the office. We have about 6 that we use for various things. But we've switched over to using the lapel mics for the podcasts. Although the audio quality in the best case scenario is not quite as good with the lapel mics. These microphones are a lot more forgiving in terms of, for one thing, you don't have your face isn't sort of covered partway. When we started doing video podcasts, we didn't like the fact that you end up with your face kind of covered by the pop shield. And then plus, certain individuals who we won't get into right now tended to have a problem with talking into the microphone. They'd be talking to each other like this, and you don't get up on the microphone. I'm not talking about Heather. But certain people would not get up on the microphone so much, and so we had to. It's a little more forgiving to use the lapel mics. If we switch back to lapel mic here. Actually, okay. Random aside about Cameron using a microphone. It's weird. For some reason, whatever the frequency that he speaks at is not picked up by certain microphones as well. I've done a podcast with him, sitting beside him, watching him be right where he needs to be on the microphone, talking at a totally normal, good volume, talking at like the same volume I'm talking, as both being equal distances away from the microphone, and the levels being recorded for him will be like half the size as the levels for me. I do not understand how it works. Anyway, the frequency that he speaks at is not picked up by microphones. I don't know. I might have mentioned this before previously, but cool thing about the SM58 microphone, illustration of why it's so. The neat thing about the SM58 microphone, this particular type of microphone, is if you're doing something that this microphone is good for, like for instance vocals, really like music and stuff, like anything that where you can get really up on the microphone, this is a absolutely fabulous microphone, and a lot of performers really like it. It's like $100, and so it's a neat scenario we have where one of the best microphones for that application that you can get is not actually that expensive. Like there's a famously Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, in the most amazing production, the most recent production of The Wall, the largest touring, most expensive, largest touring concert ever done. The main singer uses an SM58 microphone, $100 microphone, for this like $1 billion production, because that's the microphone that he likes. He likes the sound that it makes. Anyway, they're also extremely tough. So for instance, if somebody drops the microphone, whether intentionally or for emphasis, then it probably won't get hurt too bad. So that's audio, I think. And as with everything, we're always experimenting with new audio stuff. I feel like our audio there are improvements that we could be making in our audio that are sort of beyond my capabilities in terms of what I know about it, and also just my I don't think I have a great ear for audio things, and so I find it difficult to know. It's like, is that better? Is it worse? I can't really tell. the third tier, or the third leg, if you will, of our setup here is our lighting. And this is the part that's probably been enhanced the most in our new studio. Studio A, the lighting consisted of overhead lights and 3 fluorescent floodlights. For Studio C, one of the big improvements that we wanted to do was get a more sort of theatrical lighting setup. And you can see on the roaming camera here that we have many lights. Also, I was standing, and they're all connected to this grid that we have above, which was something else that we actually got custom made. Obviously, a lighting grid is not something that is typically in an office building, but when this building was retrofitted for our usage, we got them to install this grid, which is connected directly to the. It's not like, instead of hanging stuff from the drop ceiling that we used to do, this grid is actually connected directly to the concrete ceiling. And yeah, we got lots of lights. And actually, Heather, if you want to not point the lights at, not point the camera at the lights, I can turn them on. Important safety tip. Well, one, don't look at lights. That's not really a safety tip that you should know. You shouldn't know. But don't point a camera directly at bright studio lights. It's bad for the sensor of the camera because it can overload it. So these are what are called Dmx Controlled Lights, which means that we can, instead of having to like go around and turn the lights on individually or whatever, we can control them to do stuff like, say, if I go to the wide shot here, say it's time for AFK. Whoop.
May work better with the overheads on.
Yeah, you won't see that much of a change here, but if I turn the overheads off, you can see this is our lighting setup for AFK. And we can, black out. Do AFK. We can do the lighting setup we had for. This is the lighting setup we had for Nightmare. You can see it's got a bunch of that red tinge to it. We have the always useful dance party and various other things. And again, this is like everything we have. This is something that we're still sort of experimenting with and working to improve. If you notice, not surprisingly, I guess, there are no lights pointed at me. Because there's no reason to point lights at the control desk, which you will have seen normally for Loading Ready Live. When the camera comes around to like, it's starting right now, it's usually real dark. So we can do, and if you've seen the behind the scenes stuff and various other things, you know that Ben's really the mastermind behind our whole lighting setup, and he's done an amazing job with setting them up. And I mean, we have it's a tricky situation we have here. We have all sorts of different shows that we run. We've got AFK and Magic and Tinker Tailor and Loading Ready Live, and drafts and different things, and they often require different ideas for lighting setups and things, and so we have our lighting setup we sort of use it normally, but then we always have to make like adjustments and things. If you only have if we only have like 2 people on set, like for a Magic game, or 3 people with a table friend, that the lighting is a little different than if we have like 5 people for Dice Friends or whatever, right? The people are sitting in different spots, so we need to move the lights around a little bit. So that's taken a lot of experimentation, getting used to. We'll probably still tweak things more as time goes on. But it's it's something that we are constantly, we're trying to improve ourselves, and I hope that it gives a more theatrical, more professional look to our various streams and stuff. That is something that obviously we strive for here at Bionic Trousers Industries. If I move this, you can see there isn't actually that much hidden behind me. I didn't actually like mark out all of these 3 lights here for the lighting grid on the thing are representative of the entire lighting grid. This is the thing. I will note that the controller we have right now, the American DJ My DMX Buddy, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a lighting controller. We've run into a few issues with it and stuff, so we may be upgrading to a different lighting controller at some point, because we've been a little disappointed in the capabilities of the lighting controller. I can show you. This is the software that we use, which is called My DMX. And so there's the switching between the different setups and things, and then these are actually all the settings, settings for the lights. You can see, ooh. And so the DMX as a protocol is kind of weird. Like, it's a little bit kind of archaic, you might say. Like, it's not. It's been around for a really long time, and some of the ways it does things, like it has this sort of channel system that's a little bit weird. Is there a possibility of synchronizing audio and lighting events? I think maybe. I don't know. We haven't really experimented with that too much. So it's the kind of thing where it's like, now maybe everything would be like USB or something. But DMX is nice. The other nice thing about DMX is that it does travel over what are effectively XLR cables. Like if somebody, XLR cables and DMX cables are electrically and in terms of their ports and stuff, mostly interchangeable. The actual cable construction themselves can alter a little bit. XLR cables are specially shielded for audio usage and stuff, but especially in a pinch and over a relatively short run, you can use a DMX cable as an XLR audio cable. Is a cool note. And you can definitely use XLR audio cables as DMX cables, although you wouldn't want to, because XLR cables tend to be more expensive. You're not using 5-pin? Actually, some of our lights are using 5-pin. Most of them are 3-pin, though. About half and half. Maybe 2/3, 1/3. Let's see. Is there any? Oh, so the other. So that's the main. So we got camera, we got audio, we got lighting, and then we got a bunch of sort of MISC, I guess. For instance, we have over here. There's the chat monitor, which is another big improvement in this studio that we didn't have in our Studio Delta, our moon-based Delta, which is kind of a it's sort of something that in a lot of ways grew out of Desert Bus. And if you've seen if you saw the LRRTech a while ago where I talked about the nifty chat monitor script, you can see, are you guys ready? It's you! This is you. This is what you looked like. So this is what we can see this, and this is a good way to tell what the chat delay is too, or the stream delay is. So this is all run by, there's just a little Raspberry Pi sort of hidden in behind that runs this whole system, that runs the chat monitor. Theoretically, it could be run by like the streaming computer or something, but then you know, what we're doing on this computer could affect the chat monitor and stuff. It's nice that the chat monitor is completely independent from everything else. Originally, I didn't think that I would be able to do this sort of relatively sophisticated chat monitor with the, you know, the whole script and everything that we use for it. I thought it would have to be some sort of IRC system, but the Raspberry Pi 3 is actually pretty tough, pretty burly. It's not like, if you notice, especially when there was a lot of people talking there, it got a little chunky. But even during Desert Bus, though, it was fine in terms of being able to keep up with people talking. You can see right beside the chat monitor there is a relatively new addition, is our a timer system. I can actually come over here. We actually we started using this for Loading Ready Live because, well, to put a fine point on it, we noticed that sometimes we're going like way over time on segments, and so we were like, and part of the problem is that when you're up on, you know, when you're on camera and you're talking about stuff, it's easy to sort of lose track of time. And so this is just a iPad. This is in fact the iPad, as in the first iPad. This is a iPad 1 that still does great work as our timer. This is just a little script that I wrote that ties into XSplit so that it knows, you can see here, it knows how long we've been online, which is 1 hour and 7 seconds, the current time, and then also how long we've been on, what scene in XSplit we are currently on, and how long we've been on that. So, like for instance, when we're doing Loading Ready Live, each segment in Loading Ready Live will be a different scene in XSplit, and so it tells us how long we've been on the particular segment in Loading Ready Live. So that's something that we've been trying to use more as we've been going. So there you go. I'm actually like a huge, you know, you've probably seen it around in different places. I love iPads just for the thing where it's like, it's basically just using them as basically like a monitor with an internet connection. You know, basically like a web browser with, and a monitor with an internet connection. They're so useful for just like, there's so many things, at least when we're doing for streaming and stuff, there's so many things where it's just like, I need this information displayed somewhere, and, or, you know, controlled or something, and it's like, oh yeah, we could just put it on an iPad and have a thing. We don't have to like figure out some crazy, or, you know, build some special thing that has lights that display certain things or whatever. We can just, oh yeah, we can just have an iPad. It's got a full display on it. And this is an iPad 1, and yet it still can provide useful things to society. And oh, that's fancy. You can see through time. Okay. So just to, I guess, to finish up the layout here, you saw, or you should have seen, the TV that you were just seeing through infinity in is this preview monitor here. You can see that's connected up wirelessly to. We've got this the chat monitor and the iPad and that TV are all together on kind of a little cart that we can move around. And because we wanted that cart to be sort of have as few wires as possible, all it just has like the power cable, a power cable that comes down from the ceiling to power everything on it. But we didn't want to have like an HDMI cable coming from the computer to it and a bunch of other stuff. So we use a wireless HDMI there. I wouldn't. The wireless HDMI is not amazing, especially in terms of distance. But over the whatever 10 feet from the computer to the little cart, it works quite well. And then we also have that preview monitor there. Now and then, if you see, in the backgrounds of AFK and Learning Way Live and everything, there's a big TV in the background of both of those sets, which you can see there. And that is literally a. What is the? There's a secondary monitor and a tertiary monitor. What's the quaternary? I don't know. It is the fourth monitor plugged into this computer, into the streaming computer. And in fact, so the fourth monitor output of the streaming computer is plugged into a splitter. Quaternary. Anyway, the fourth monitor output of the computer is plugged into just a little HDMI splitter, and it goes to both the background monitors because we realized that we're never using them both at the same time, and so they can show the same thing all the time, and that's fine. And most of the time, actually, what you're actually seeing on that screen is the background. The like desktop wallpaper. It turns out, of all the various like fancy things you can do, the easiest way to just put a full screen image up in Windows 10 is just make it the background. But we can also put a video on there. So like sometimes for Magic and for other things, we'll have like a looping video, or the like the Gatekeeper, the Nightmare stuff. We can put video up on there, and then theoretically, that TV also has like a Chromecast capability built into it. But so I was like super stoked about that, and I was like, oh great, we don't have to connect it up to the HDMI or everything. We'll just Chromecast to it. But it has a bad habit of like, it'll work fine for like 3 hours and then just randomly stop working for no reason. So, I don't know. Although the funny story about the fact that it has Chromecast capability built into it. Ben and I were working in here one time, and this has happened twice now. Ben and I have been working in here, and suddenly the TV starts playing Cosmos. And it would be like, what the? And go, Cam, and go into the friend zone, and Cam is on his phone being like, it's weird, I'm trying to play Cosmos from Twitch and it's not playing on my phone. It's like, Cam, you're connected to the Chromecast. So anyway, it's just kind of silly that way. Let's see, is there anything else? I think that's stuff. Oh, I can show you one of the other capabilities that the Blackmagic gives us is, like, I made up this little view here. This is just in XSplit. But usually, obviously, we don't have the luxury of actually cutting to a multi-camera view like this to see what's on up, to see how all the other cameras are set up. Luckily, the ATEM has a secondary monitor output that's called the multi-out that we have set up right there. So you can see, theoretically, the ATEM has 8 inputs into it. So we can have up to 8 things plugged into it, 4 SDI and 4 HDMI. Actually, another small note about the ATEM. So this is, this will be a little dark, but hopefully the camera will adjust. So we've got our, let me just show you here. We've got our, that's our switch there at the top. You can see 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's input. Input 5 is being sent out twice. Input 6 is being sent out twice. 7 is being sent out twice. 8 is being sent out twice. And these are our wireless mic bays, and we have some power stuff. So this is our fancy rack mount. We actually got this originally, and we assumed that the ATEM would also go in here because the ATEM is designed to be rack mounted, but it's loud. So the ATEM is around the corner. It's basically as far away as possible while still being connected to everything, because the ATEM makes its fans make an annoying whiny noise that is kind of a pain. It doesn't actually, like, it doesn't come across on the microphones, but if you're working here, it's really annoying. So yeah, it's all alone around in the corner. Also Secret Heather. There are actually various mods. The noisiness of the ATEM is a sort of, I wouldn't say it's a known problem because Blackmagic hasn't acknowledged it as a problem, but other people have said it, have also agreed that it is a problem. Maybe if I actually like walk over here, you can hear it. I don't know if you heard that, but anyway. So there are like hacks that you can get to like replace the fans and stuff, or like encase it in a box. You like encase it in a box with its own fan system. I don't know. There are various things you can do to try and quiet it down. It's not bad. Like if it was actually like loud enough to be picked up on the microphones in the room, it would be different. But it's not that bad. It's just kind of annoying if you're sitting here working. And the other thing is that like it doesn't have an off button. Like the ATEM never turns off. You have to physically unplug it in order to turn it off. So it's sort of always going. Is there anything from this setup to be importing into the new next Desert Bus for Hope? I mean, like I said, this setup is pretty much like, or this is pretty much how it was set up before Desert Bus and now after Desert Bus. So, I mean, there's a few bits of hardware that we'll probably be getting before the next Desert Bus that will help things out. The biggest thing with Desert Bus that we ran into this year, or for Desert Bus 11, that we weren't quite expecting. You know, I said that one of the great things about the Magewell is that it can take video from a whole bunch of different formats and present it to the computer. Like it can do all the cross conversions itself within the card. The ATEM doesn't, and it's really annoying in that way. Considering that this is Blackmagic that's making it, and they have this capability. Like they have devices that do cross conversions, no problem. Every input into the ATEM has to be in the same resolution and frame rate and like progressive versus interlace. And so I complained about this during Desert Bus, I'm sure, but when we were setting up for Desert Bus, we were like, this will be great. We have this setup. We've got the ATEM. We've got all these different things. We've got all these, we have here in the office, we've got so many different cameras. Will be great. And it turns out that while we have lots of cameras here at the office, we don't have, because I think we ended up using at least seven of the 8 inputs on the ATEM. It turns out we didn't have enough cameras that were all could be at the same resolution and frame rate. We have a bunch of cameras that could go at 60 frames a second, a bunch of cameras that could go at 30, a bunch of cameras that could go progressive, and a bunch of cameras that could go interlaced. But whatever setting we were at, there were not enough cameras that were all the same. It was very annoying. Yeah, so this is mostly the same equipment that we use for Desert Bus, but configured a little bit differently. And that's basically, since Desert Bus, I think 6 or 7, that's been the basic idea with Desert Bus, is that we're at the point where the hardware that Bionic Trousers Media owns is enough to run Desert Bus. We have to rent a few things usually, but we have capability, because of course we're not streaming during Desert Bus, so we can pull out our hardware and doing different stuff. How much we have to disassemble depends on what we're doing. But yeah, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, exactly. Like a scissor lift. That is something that we don't own, and we probably won't anytime soon. I feel like before we have to buy a scissor lift, we'll need like 2 floors. Although I will say, something that is good and definitely a positive, but frustrating for me personally, is that the ceilings in this office, especially here in Studio C, are about 2 feet higher than the ceilings in the main production studio in Moonbase Delta, which is great because that means we can have the lighting rig and we can have better angles on things. It does, however, mean that before I could reach up and turn lights on or adjust cameras, but now I either have to get a little stool or tell Ian or Graham to do it for me. So, yeah. I'm not short.
This is our stool.
Yep, it puts in real good work. Hashtag stilts for Paul. Yep, MVP stool. Yeah, luckily, a large portion of the Loading Bay Run crew is extremely tall. So, let me see. Let me just check this diagram again. For those of you who didn't catch it, this diagram that I'm looking at, that we are looking at here, should be on Twitter. You can check out. This is obviously kind of rough, but hopefully it gives you a pretty good idea of how it's set up. Oh yeah, so the mixing board here is, you see, this is a little bit interesting. The mixing board here is plugged, so there's a USB connection from the mixing board to the computer. That's how the computer gets the audio from the mixing board. And the nice thing about this board, which is actually not that common, is that it's a bidirectional USB thing. Often for whatever stupid reason, often they're unidirectional. You can either have it inputting or outputting. This one does both. So again, like I said, the audio comes from the mixing board into the computer, but audio from the computer also goes back to the mixing board so that the person sitting here controlling everything can actually hear the audio that the computer is playing. Like for instance, if we're playing a video or something, we can still hear that audio. There's also a secondary output from the computer going to the mixing board, which is the mixed feed of the stream. So that's all the microphones and the audio from whatever else, videos and everything. So that's exactly what you guys are hearing at home. I can hit a button on the board and switch it so that I can listen to that. The problem and why we don't use that all the time is that because of various processing and things that happen, there's a delay on that. The cameras and the audio and the microphones and going over USB and conversion and stuff adds about half a second of delay or whatever, which means that if that's what you're listening to, you not only get like an echo with what is actually happening in the room, but if for instance I'm trying to talk, then you get speech jammed, which is really bad. Let's see, what else is there? So anyway, so that is like an extra audio piece that is most of the time muted, and we can just lock it in every once in a while. Yeah, I think that's all. I think that's the basic setup we got here. I've tried to call out the different the actual devices that we're using, the actual like model numbers and stuff. Yeah, like I said, some of them I have wholehearted recommendations for. Some of them a little less so. It's been a process of figuring out which things work for our particular purposes. As we've lamented on many occasions, for whatever reason, somehow we here at Loading Ready Run always seem to end up doing things in a more complicated way than everybody else. I don't know how that happens, but that's just how we do things. Wholehearted recommendations for Shaw? No. The recommendation that I have for Shaw is that's the only internet we can get here. And in fact, it's the only internet we can get here, so we got it twice. So we actually have two internet lines coming to the office here. Originally, and in Studio Delta, and if you were watching our streams when we first moved into Moonbase Mark V, you have seen me complaining about this, but when we were in Studio Delta, or in Moonbase Delta, we had Shaw and TELUS, which are basically the only two internet providers here in Victoria, so that we had redundancy, and we had all our streams go out on our Shaw connection, and then everything else went out on the TELUS connection. So like that means that, for instance, we can upload videos while we're streaming, and it won't kill the internet. When we moved into the new office, it turns out that we're like basically one block out of where literally TELUS provides fiber optic internet across the street from where we are, but not to us. And I was like, do you think that's talking to the installer, like, do you think they're going to be like rolling it out more? And he's like, I wouldn't hold your breath. So it's frustrating. Yeah, I was like walking into the office and there's like a fiber install truck like across the street. Just like, and so not only could we not get fiber here, but we couldn't even get the like bonded DSL line that we used to have in our old office. This is not that old. Like, this is not a new building, but it's not that old a building. And our old office wasn't not that new a building, or not that. But anyway, so basically, the only internet we could get from TELUS was poop internet. And we got it anyway because we thought it would be okay, and then it turned out to be more poop internet than we thought it was because it started just like dropping frames for no reason. And then we fought with them for a while about that. And so the end result is we ended up with two Shaw lines, because I have no idea how cable internet works. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me, but Shaw has a maximum amount of speed that they can provide, but you can get multiple of those maximum amount of speed without them actually having to give you another, like, install any more wires. They just flip a switch. So I think we've got like 100 megabit, like 120 or something, but we have two of those. Like 100, we have the fastest they can provide, and then another one. For some reason, we can't just get one connection that's twice the speed, but anyway. I don't understand how it works, but it seems to work now. I've been pretty happy with our internet stuff in terms of frame drops and things. I feel like most of the time we have issues with frame drops. Now it's Twitch's fault as opposed to our fault. So I'm comfortable blaming Twitch for that. Can you pay somebody across the street to get access to fiber and then get a two-directional directional antenna? I feel like that would be kind of defeating the like if we're getting fiber to somewhere else and then have to send it. Yeah. I actually, when we were having all the internet problems, I actually looked, I legitimately put some inquiries into places that actually do like custom fiber installations, because I was like, you know, obviously internet is very important for us. And the good news was that they were willing to waive the $1,500 install fee if you signed up for like 2 years. And we're like, well, you know, we're going to sign up for 2 years. You know, we're going to be here for a while, so signing up for 2 years worth of it is not necessarily bad, and then we don't have to pay the $1,500 install fee. The problem is you'd be signing up for 2 years of $1,500 a month internet access. So the install fee is not the scary part. So anyway, we don't have the best internet here. That wasn't even for like super fast either. Like the speed was like, you know, good, but it wasn't insane. And obviously corporations can afford that and stuff, but I mean, large corporations. Bionic Trousers is a corporation. That's what the INC part means. Is that supposed to be for like a whole office building? I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about in terms of the stream. I hope this gives you an idea. You know, we like I was saying, we've shown a lot of behind the scenes stuff in terms of us playing around in Studio C and getting things set up and things, but hopefully this gives you kind of a better idea from the technical aspect, actually how it operates and why we do things in the way we do it. And yeah, feel free to you know, contact me, send me an email or whatever. Not on Twitter, because I'm not on Twitter, but I'm always curious to hear from people if you have any thoughts or you know, more information. If you're setting up something yourself, I'm more than happy to let you know what we do, why we do it, and if you've got some ideas for improvements that could be made, I'm interested to hear them. But what's the main filming camera you use? Oh, our main camera we use actually kind of works out quite nice. So the main camera we use these days is an Ursa, the Blackmagic Ursa Mini, not the Ursa Mini Pro, which is of course the new one that came out like 4 months after we bought ours, as is the way with these things. But the cool thing is, so the Blackmagic Ursa is what we use for all our main shooting stuff, and you would have seen that a lot in like crap shoots and stuff. And what's nice about it though is that it has the same two SDI connections that are the Blackmagic studio cameras do, and so like we can use it as an extra studio camera. And in fact, we do for like Dice Friends for the close-up on Kathleen. We actually connect up the Ursa and use that as a extra studio camera. Yeah, so that's new DMX hardware. Oh yeah, there's definitely, we didn't really know that much about the DMX thing, and so we just sort of got one that seemed fine. But the big problem with the why I wouldn't recommend necessarily this particular the DMX Buddy controller is that it's the protocol that it uses, to the USB system that it uses, which then is connected to DMX, is a proprietary thing from the company. So it's not like, whereas with some other DMX controllers, there's a whole raft of different pieces of DMX software you can use to control the system. For the DMX Buddy, you have to use the MyDMX software, which is not the greatest software. Yeah, so thanks for watching, everybody. That was fun. I hope it made sense. I know I kind of ramble about stuff sometimes, but hopefully that made sense. I'm hoping to do more LRRTech stuff in the relatively near future. Talking about probably more on the software side. So talking about some of the fancy things we have going on here in terms of overlay stuff and technology that I've worked out over the years. So keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. We don't necessarily have, LRRTech doesn't have a scheduled recurring thing, although maybe it should. But keep an eye out on the schedule for that, and we'll try to make it clear when those are happening. Coming up, we've got Rhythm Cafe. For instance, this thing would be something that I could talk about how I made it. But anyway, Rhythm Cafe. Heather and Corey are going to be playing bit.trip. And then not the last time, but the last opportunity James is going to have for doing the community PUBG stuff with the custom servers and everything. Hopefully the PUBG guys like our, because we're sort of in a trial period for having all the custom stuff. So tomorrow night is going to be the last opportunity to do that. So come out and join James for that. And then on Monday, we've got Checkpoint. It's probably going to be Kathleen and I doing some checkpoint, because things are going to be a little bit crazy with RoadQuest just about to leave. So we're probably going to just do the chill point, but that'll be fun anyway on Monday. And then some Dice Friends on Monday evening. And then New Day, we got Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey with Kathleen and Heather. So that's, you guys are going to run it back. I guess it's because of like E3. There's just, yeah, we were really having a lot of trouble finding games for New Day this during the June. So and Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey, I'm assuming, was fun to play.
No.
It wasn't?
No.
Oh.
No.
Maybe you should not have committed to 2 weeks of it.
That's Kathleen's fault. Not mine.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. And then Cameron will be playing PUBG, just regular PUBG that time, not the custom levels and stuff. But anyway, so lots of other cool stuff. I believe James has updated the events page and calendar and all that stuff. So check out loganmaryrun.com/live and all the things. Finally, I did, on the subject of talking about Rogue Quest and early leaving, I just wanted to say that how amazing it's been with, the Rogue Quest is something that we had this idea for, something that Graham in particular has been sort of planning and thinking about for a really long time. And we had this idea, and we did the trial thing, and it turned out really well. And we showed that to you guys, and the support for the Rogue Quest project has been totally amazing. And it's the funding is closed. The donation drive is closed now because we want to make sure we can collate all the names so that they have them for when they go, because they're leaving next week. So it's there's over 1,600 people were put in donations for that, and so that's totally amazing. Really blown away by the support for allowing us to do what we do, and it is because it's a strange world we live in now that that this is something that can work. That we don't have to be trying to hustle, spending all our time, trying to get some company to sponsor us to do this thing. We can say this is a project that we think you'll really enjoy, and you agree and are supporting it directly. It's not like this weird convoluted, like, whatever, Coca-Cola will give us money to do this because there's like a slightly increased percentage chance that you'll buy Coca-Cola if you want. See, it's a direct thing. You like it, you send it to us, and then we produce it and send it back to you. And it's a wonderful thing. So thank you all so much for allowing us to do what we do and supporting us through the Rogue Quest donation drive, through Patreon, through the Twitch subscriptions, and all the amazing things that we do. And on that note, I should thank all the subscribers, because I haven't been doing that, because my train of thought is winding enough anyway that I didn't want to lose it by trying to get distracted by thanking subs in the middle of it. Let me just make sure that I'm set up for all the people. So thank you everybody for subscribing and supporting this channel and everything we do here. But in particular, thank you to Lion's Eye Diamond for 52 months. Iron Leviathan for Iron Leviathan 89, who's a new subscriber. Eodox Arbosa for 4 months. XH Res 2 for 18 months. The fabled LRRTech resub. Yeah, wow, you have to. That's waiting for a LRRTech to resub is a risky proposition. Doniane, maybe. Oh, I feel bad that I can't get people's names. For 13 months anyway. Seriously, it's been 12 months since the first time I subbed. Thank you very much. Doniani. I don't know. I'm sorry. T-Dog GBR is a new subscriber. Welcome. Phosphor for 6 months. Thank you very much. The Bentuzzi for 52 months. Cool stream, Paul. Thank you. Sedane Tierney. Yeah, for 6 months. I forget to donate to RoadQuest, so hopefully this makes up for it. You don't need to make up for it. Any support that you can give in whatever fashion you can give it is so much appreciated. Vixia, maybe, for 20 months. LRRTech sub rehype. Wait, LRRTech resub hype. For 14 months. Wait, yes. The Warbo for 8 months. Woo, LRRTech. Travelog for 1 whole year. Thank you. Tiber 727 for 21 months. I have this sub message sitting here about to be overwritten by next month. On that note, enjoy the rest of your day. Formerly Board Gamer for 40 months. Yay, Paul, you are the tech wizard I aspire to be. Well, thank you. Bald Rash for 39 months. LRRTech subtrain. Choo choo. And thank you for the 512 bits from Rock Pusher, Earthen One, and Canvas Wolf Doll. The audio bees are back. The audio bees are back. I wasn't wearing headphones. Hello. Are there audio bees now? It sounds fine now. I don't know. They stopped when you put the headset on. Look, I don't know, guys. This is why I said sometimes our audio, there are improvements I would like to make in the audio. The problem is that a lot of the problems that we encounter are extremely inconsistent, which makes it very frustrating to try and solve. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. And tomorrow, or tonight, stay tuned for the custom, no, not tonight, tomorrow night, PUBG Customs, and tomorrow afternoon we have Rhythm Cafe. So we'll talk to you later. Bye.